Punked on Life. Today we're talking about excuses. I love this one.
I do too, actually.
Yeah, because, okay, first let's talk about this quote. I think this is a good lead-in. So if you want it, you'll find a way. And if you don't, you'll find an excuse. I mean, that says so much right there. But
Yeah.
what do you think about excuses?
I just think it's just like false. It's just a lot of stories that we make in our heads. Of why it prevents us from. It honestly prevents us from like reaching our full potential in a lot of ways. If you really think about it, because we get so enlightened like why we can't do anything, and then like we've talked about on our life lessons before in our coaching groups, is they become reasons. Like, and that is so true. We justify it, and then we make it the biggest reason of why we can't do this or why we shouldn't achieve this, or why we couldn't do that, with injuries, with work, with life, with everything that says that why we can't go do something. I mean, me and you, even though we're talking about it now, it's not like me and you have never done it. Like, well, you know what, that just doesn't work. Like for instance, I shared the other day, we were in the gym. Me and David were in the gym, and what happened was, and this is a great example, is we went early in the morning. We were going to CrossFit later on in the night. So we did our cardio. We finished our cardio. We started doing our lifting. There were still 2 more lifts left that we were supposed to do in our program. But we looked at each other and we were like, hey, well, you know what? We got CrossFit later on tonight. So let's go. So what did we do? We did exactly that. We took that excuse and turned it into a reason of why we shouldn't. And we used CrossFit, and we used that we already did all this lifting, that we already did our cardio, instead of keeping our integrity and finishing just the last 2 lifts, which, would that really hurt us? No, but it's the point that we made that simple of an excuse. And that's how simple it can be, but that's also the simplest way that it can derail us from being successful in anything that we want to do. So I just wanted to say that just before we dive into this, to be like, I don't just like, I've got to check myself too.
I mean, I think all of us make excuses on a daily basis, because even to going to hanging out with your friends sometimes, right? I don't have time, that drives me literally crazy, is when I hear somebody say, I don't have time. No, it's not a priority. That's an excuse.
Yes.
And so for whatever it is that you're saying that you don't have time for, I don't have time to meal prep, right? I don't have time to go, hang out with so-and-so. I don't have time. It's what are your priorities? Because everything else is an excuse, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now,
So,
there's some excuses that are real reasons. Like, if you like literally like break your leg, you know what I mean, you're not gonna be able to run a marathon. Or if like your fitness festival, I didn't. My uncle died, so I couldn't come. You know what I mean? Like, those are legit reasons. We're not trying to say there's not legit things that happen in life that you can't go do something. But a lot of the time, it's like, okay, if you get an injury, the injury is the worst one, I think, that we deal with. Is if you get an injury, so what? Like, okay, so you got an injury. So what? You know what I mean? Like, literally, they use that as an excuse, as a crutch of why, well, I can't exercise, it messes with my mind. Well, that thing didn't put all that doesn't program you to just, like, eat bad or stop chasing down your goals or your dreams because you got hurt. You know what I mean? There's no, like, when you break a leg, there's no thing that indicates, well, then you're done, So.
That's why I love the story about Bob that was on our podcast already.
Yeah.
And how he was able to lose all that weight when he had 2 bad knees. Not even bad knees. Like
blown ACLs. Yeah.
Yeah, and he still made it happen. And I go to the point of, I'm seriously the no excuse person of that. It's like, I'm going to go hard on you guys right now. When have you guys ever seen that video of that person doing CrossFit? They literally have no legs and arms. I'm not kidding you. And they are still doing CrossFit, right? There could be so many excuses of why that person, could not be doing CrossFit. But to them, they're making no excuses, right? They're going to make the best of what they have. So
exactly.
And I agree with you, Bruce. There are things in life that happen that I like how you said that. I think there are more reasons of why you can't do something, but you got to be really careful between what, what the reason is that's coming up and the excuses that you're playing and the stories you're telling yourself in the head that like, which would go into a whole nother life lesson. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and
But
I like what you said about priorities. I think if people are more real too with themselves of priorities, I'd rather somebody give me a thing of a list of that it's not a priority than an excuse. Just come out and flat out say it. You know what? Right now, it's
yeah.
just not a priority.
Yeah.
If people are more with me and they say that, I can't really argue with that because I can be like, okay, because I can't change your priorities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
like you were saying, hang out with the friends or even responding to people in text messages or responding like
Uh,
calls or whatever. It is. If it's not a priority, like instead of saying like, oh, I've been so busy doing this, just come out and say, you know what, it's not a priority right now because my priorities are this, this, and this. And then when I get to that, then I will be able to do that. Like,
yeah.
okay, then I can't argue with it. But when you pile up the excuses, that's when you just sound like, you know what, you're lazy, you're not like, you don't care, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion though, because wouldn't you rather hear like, right now it's not a priority. That's not a priority on my list. So it is, I
Mm,
care about it, but it's not a priority right now. You know,
yeah.
like you rather hear that than somebody give you a whole list of excuses.
Right. Right. Because you know what? People can see through your bullshit.
Yeah,
They can.
exactly. Hmm.
You sometimes don't want to believe that they can, but they can. So might as well say it like that. And I think that even just giving everybody some ways to kind of work through this. So maybe you're sitting there and you're like, you've been making so many excuses and you're having a hard time seeing of what are the excuses you're making. So just like anything, I would encourage you to go get out a pen and paper and start writing down things in your life that you feel like you've been creating excuses around, right? And not only writing them down of when you're creating those excuses, but writing down when and what's happening in your life when you're making those excuses. And if you find yourself writing down a lot of things where you're creating excuses around making commitments, right? My encouragement to you right there and then would be to look at that and think of where you can pull back on making those commitments, okay? So if you're overcommitting to going out with your friends, if you're overcommitting to at work, if you're overcommitting in your family life, if you're overcommitting in a lot of areas, you're going to find that you're making a lot of excuses in those areas of why you can't do it, right? And again, it's going to be a lot of things of I'm too busy, I don't have time for, right? That's probably the number one thing I hear from people. So really identify those things. Identify when you're creating those in your life so that you can start to work through them. And if you are noticing a lot of your excuses, again, talking about writing those down of when you're noticing these excuses come in life and writing those things down so that you can now look at them and be like, okay, how can I do this differently, right? How can I commit differently? And overall, when you start to do that, when you start to make less excuses in your life, you're going to be a better friend. You're going to be a better employee. You're going to be a better you're going to be better in all areas of your life. Because like I said, people will see through your bullshit. They will see when you're making excuses. Even to the point of, I can't do this in my workout or I can't do that in my workout, right? Writing those things down. Why do you think you can't do those things in your workout? And is it just because you're fearful to do them? Is it because you're scared of different things, or are you just seeing the truth in it? Is actually the excuse?
Exactly. And another thing that is kind of maybe a sensitive subject for people, but a lot of the times people make excuses when tragedy happens in their life. And I'm
Mm.
not justifying tragedy. I'm not justifying like when things go wrong, but they justify their behavior. They justify, oh, there was a death in my family. Oh, there was this situation that happened. Okay. You know what? And we're not saying that you can't somber or you can't have that time, but it's when does that become an excuse? When does that become too much of a crutch for you for your behavior? Like, and at that point, it just becomes a vicious cycle. because then you're doing the poor me. Then you're doing the like feel sorry for me stuff because, oh, this happened. You know what? Once a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, months go by, years go by, and if you're still following on that course of like, this is what I fall back on every single time that this happens, then like, you know what? That's a crutch and that's an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
That really is, because you know what? When it happened, over a period of time, like that's the world's moved on. You know what I mean? Like the world has moved on, and it doesn't give you justification to just be like, this is what I'm going to do now. So, also pay attention to your life, like using tragedy as an excuse. I write that down, and like you were saying, make that a part of your list. How many times have I done that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that if people write it down and they really start to look at it, they're going to notice a pattern, right? When I got injured, excuse, right? I've seen people go through multiple injuries in their life, and it's always been the time that they fall back and maybe gain all the way back, or they lose all that momentum that they had going because it started to create excuse after excuse after excuse. But once you identify it, you write it down, that's a way that you can start to overcome and look on how you can overcome that, right? But until you identify it, that's when you identify it, that's when you take away its power. So.
Yep. Exactly. That's good.
Anything else?
Nope. Leave your excuses at the door. That's it.
Okay. I think that's right on.
Perfect.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
We're out.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Pumped on Life with Bruce and Rachel. If you'd like to learn more about Bruce, you can follow him on social media at Bruce Pitcher. You can also pick up his book, Larger Than Life, on Amazon. For Rachel, Instagram, rachel.pastor, or her website, rachelpastor.com. Don't forget to follow Pumped on Life on Instagram. Thanks for listening.